Welcome to the Alain Elkann interviews, an unprecedented window into the minds of some of the most well-known and respected figures of the last 25 years.
How would you describe the FT? What is the FT?
It's the news organisation, and I don't call it a newspaper. The day I took over, I said we're print and digital, and we offer a unique, I think, perspective, global perspective on politics, economics, finance and business. We connect the dots between these. And I say globalization because, I took over in 2005 and you were probably at near peak globalization. It was just 2 years or so, 3 years before the financial crash. And I thought that was a great way of encapsulating what we did, because we're rooted in the City of London, but we have a global perspective. We've got a foreign network of more than 100 foreign correspondents. That gives us a global footprint. Now, since the crash, the paper of globalization has had to become the paper of understanding deglobalization, if you can call it that, or the reaction against globalization and the reaction against the freedom of movement of capital and labor and people. And so we've had to encompass that into our coverage. But overall, I see the paper, it's the news organization with a unique global perspective on the modern world and the modern global economy.
Is it since Trump?
No, I think it's since the day Lehman collapsed. I mean, it took a while for think about Occupy Wall Street. And we'd had demonstrations against globalization from, say, in Seattle, or I was in north of Rome, the summit where Berlusconi was prime minister. Anyway, it was the G7. They had helicopters. Anyway, there's been protests. But obviously things really changed after the financial crash. And you saw it started with Occupy Wall Street and the rise of populism. And so Trump actually is maybe the apogee, maybe the peak there. It may not be. And you can see how politics is now affecting trade, economics, the populists. And we've got to understand all that. You're not having any more multilateral global trade agreements. You're having bilateral agreements. You're seeing America cast out on alliances. All this, we have to try and explain.
You obviously made an interview with Trump, and
yes,
then a very discussed one with his advisor, Bannon. He also wrote a very interesting article about that. It was like,
what's the point of the interview?
In which you praise the art of interview. That Trump is really doing a big job in that sense. He seems to want to dismantle everything, but also he surprises. Is the world going the way you thought at the FT, or it's very difficult to know because things change all the time?
First of all, Trump. Trump is the disruptor in chief. He is casting doubt not just on the legacy of his predecessor, Barack Obama, who supported, for example, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, who supported the Iran nuclear agreement. He's actually, to my mind, challenging basic tenets of the post-war liberal order. He's basically saying that alliances are cumbersome, and he wants to not even go back. I mean, he wants to move to a position of aggressive bilateralism. And so that really does challenge. It's not what we believe in at the FT. It challenges fundamentally the European view of the world. And it's also a shift from what he said to me in the interview and my colleagues a year ago, where I asked him about NATO, and he kind of gave grudging support. I think there's not been a change. He said it was useful. I mean, he complained about the amount of money, the contributions of the major allies, notably Germany. But he paid a bit more than lip service to the value of the NATO alliance. I think now he feels he's comfortable in the job. He's fundamentally changed his team. The so-called globalists, people like Gary Cohn, H.R. McMaster, they've gone. They've left. And he has people, again, who believe in aggressive bilateralism, and John Bolton. But Trump actually, I've talked to some of the people who really know him, and they say, he's comfortable in the job. He thinks he can do it. He thinks he's doing really well. And he thinks he'll be proven correct by this very transactional approach to international relations. I also wrote something which caused some eyebrows to be raised when I got back to London, where I said there are tentative signs, and I quote, that there is a little more method in the madness than first appears. If you look at the interview, it says that. Now, when I arrived in Washington a year ago to interview the president, I mean, I've never been in a White House that was in such chaos. It was like a film set, and there was no attention to schedule, timing, people were wandering in and out. And even my phone, which I placed on the president's desk, which is just unheard of, because the security would normally always take that away. There was just no control over anything. It settled down by September when I then went back. I would say now, there's no real process, because he doesn't believe in process. He likes chaos. He likes disruption. He likes keeping everybody off balance. But if he thinks he's going to handle North Korea, for example, he may possibly have figured out, he's figured out a way to get him to the table, Kim Jong-un. The crucial point is he going to be able to defang the nuclear program? And that's a huge question. Will Kim actually give up nuclear weapons?
He's doing what he wants. All the Europeans, Macron first, love, and Merkel less, and Johnson too, went to beg him to stay in the Iran thing, but he didn't care. He did what he wanted. So one way he's like that, and the other way people have a feeling that he has no politics. That every day he wakes up in the morning and he says, today let's do this or let's do that. That's a bit the feeling people have. And this, obviously, you being a financial newspaper too, influences so much the markets and what's going on, right? One day he says one thing and the market goes down because he gives also so much importance to the market. There's no president that I heard before that starts a speech saying, have you seen the Dow Jones today is up?
He doesn't do that when the Dow Jones goes down, though.
He doesn't, but he speaks all the time about that. So what you try to say is he becoming more a professional?
No, he thinks he's becoming professional is not the word I would use, and I don't think he would use it. Effective. Professional, he revels on breaking all the rules. He revels in not being tied down, doing the unconventional. The question for me is much more, it's twofold. What does he really believe in? Is his approach, is there a sort of fundamental logic in his world outlook? What is it? What's the core? And I'll come to that. The second question is, how much of this posturing, the tweeting, the constant communication, wanting to be the center of attention, how much is this actually just a giant distraction from what's really going on? And I put this question to Steve Bannon. And I said, I'm just thinking actually what you do is you deliberately rile everybody. You get people really mad. But actually, you're doing something completely different. And so we get just distracted. And he said, yeah, we used to call it, in the Navy, we used to call it diversionary fire. And I think there's some truth in this. And it's a problem and a challenge for the press.
This is to cover the Russian gate or the...
Yeah, just change the news agenda. Change the news agenda. One of the most important things he's done is deregulation, gutting the agencies. But how much have we written about that versus how much have we analysed his tweets? Well, I suggest we need to spend more time looking at what he's doing in terms of policy and deregulation than parsing tweets. We have to come back to what he actually believes in. And I think he believes in fundamentally the exercise of American power.
Make America strong again.
Yeah, great again. And that is about the application of, and that means America has fought too many wars overseas. It has too many overseas entanglements. He's not the first president to use that word. He probably doesn't use that word, entanglement, but essentially just spent money, treasure. And if you think about the cost of Iraq and Afghanistan, 2.3 trillion or whatever dollars, you can see where he's coming from. But he definitely believes that. And I think the second thing he believes in very strongly when it comes to the application of American power is you deal with nuclear threat. And that means particularly North Korea. It means Iran to a degree but Iran clearly hasn't tested a missile that could reach the United States, doesn't have a nuclear program to that degree, but it's still it's potential nuclear power, and he believes very strongly.
No other nuclear power.
Yeah. The paradox, of course, is that if Iran really does resume its nuclear program, there will be another nuclear power, and it'll be called Saudi Arabia.
And all this is quite frightening, isn't it?
It's potentially very frightening.
He didn't think he would be president.
That's what Michael Wolff wrote. We have no actual proof of that.
He was a second-class businessman. You say he has this plan to make America great again, to dismantle this, to do... The Chinese have long-term projects for years on, and it looks like if he changed, if he lived day after day, he prepared himself to this. He had this idea.
He's had certain ideas about restoring American power. What he has certain ideas about what made America great, and they do go back to a kind of 1950s vision. Great American manufacturing, making real things. There was a bit of that. He also fundamentally thinks that America has not been a beneficiary of the global trade liberalization, I think wrongly. But he also thinks that America's been outsmarted by other trading nations, notably China. And he thinks there's a fundamental imbalance.
The Chinese immediately answered cutting soya in the America that is voting for him. He didn't know that. He didn't think of that.
Somebody said to me, and I've written this, so it's not original. A top Wall Street executive said to me on the day after the election when I rang him to say, okay, Trump's won. I'm surprised. I'm not totally surprised, but just tell me what it's going to be like. And he said, it is going to be completely different. It's going to be like nothing you've ever seen. So I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, look, the first thing is, normally presidents sit down with their advisors, they take advice coming up to a negotiation, and they work out roughly what the demanding price is and where they're roughly going to settle. That is not what Trump will do. Trump will have little process at all. He'll just start off by asking for 99%. 99%. And the thing is, what he will then do is start retreating from day one. And he'll just wait then to see where the other side come down and where he may stop. But he'll be retreating and he'll come down from 99%. And you just see where you end up. And he'll bully and whatever. But, he says you have to see, it's like a form of price discovery.
Is he going to be impeached?
Well, that's off the thing, but I'm just talking about his style of negotiation, because this is what he does. And he makes it a big drama. He talks about the hostages coming back. I will make my decision. And it's all designed to intimidate, to pressure. But there's an awful lot of noise and show behind where we can. Now, with the Chinese that we were talking about, let's see what happens. He probably did understand that the Chinese would retaliate. But he's basically, he thinks, well, we'll see what deal we can. Remember, he's not being personal about Xi Jinping. He's been...
saying he's a friend.
Yeah, he's been clear about that. So it's very similar. It's just business. Just business.
We have understood that we have a president who now thinks he's in his job, and he's unpredictable, but he has some points that you have underlined that are clear, right? He'll make America great again, his idea. Now, to re-establish fear for America, in a way, right?
Yeah.
And if he does the Korean deal, that will show that he was right. He intimidated the Koreans, and at the end of the day, they made the deal.
Yeah, but then again, to me, it all comes down to what's the deal, and is he really unpicked the nuclear program? I mean, with absolutely really aggressive inspections, but there's a pledge to denuclearize, and that's going to be the test. Because otherwise, they've got the capacity. They haven't got a finished warhead, but they've certainly got a capacity to launch an intercontinental ballistic missile. And we know they've got a big stock of plutonium. It's not perfect, but the reason he's come to a table, how much is it because he's really been intimidated and the sanctions have hurt by China? Definitely, I think they have. But actually, I think he's reached a stage that it's a crude nuclear weapon. And he knows he can reach just about US territory. So he's got what he needs. He's reached the threshold faster than some of the official estimates, to which he has something to bring to the table, right? But the question is what the deal is.
Iran, was it predictable? I mean, this idea.
Yeah, it was predictable. I know everybody's they're absolutely shocked. But that's what he said that it was the worst ever deal.
He said it.
And I think the only reason people are surprised is that a succession of leaders, all beginning with M, by the way, interestingly, Macron, Merkel, May, they all went to Washington and they begged him not to abandon the deal. And he listened and just said, no. That's the sign of surprise that they've ended up semi-humiliated. And the question is what to do now. But I wasn't surprised that he did it. I'm just wish he
the Israeli
for a better deal.
connection has something to do in that.
Of course it has some influence. He's a friend of Israel. You've seen what he's done on Jerusalem.
Yeah.
That was again breaking a sort of long taboo. Actually, I've been in Saudi Arabia. I was recently in Israel. The idea that the Saudis are going to go to the war for the Palestinians, forget that. And are they going to make a huge fuss over the US move to Jerusalem? No. Actually, what's interesting is the degree of closer cooperation between the Saudis and the Israelis. And that's, to me, a sort of sign of how the world is changing a bit. The Saudis are the other crucial country here is the UAE and Abu Dhabi, the Crown Prince, who's MBZ, who's a mentor of MBS, the Crown Prince, who's very influential. He's very anti-Iranian, very concerned about Iranian influence, not just the nuclear program, but also Hezbollah and support of insurgencies. They felt abandoned by the Americans, and they shared with the Israelis a fundamental disagreement with them over the nuclear deal. It was no coincidence that President Trump, he chose his first foreign visit to go to Saudi Arabia.
And the fact that he decided to bomb in Syria against the Russians, is Putin seen by you as a threat?
No, but he didn't. I don't think he went to bomb in Syria because of the Russians. He bombed because there were
Russians were.
They were very clear. There was coordination beforehand. The Russians moved I think, some of the ships out of Tarsus. They were incredibly careful on the targeting. I don't think this was an anti-Russian move at all. This was all about, and it happened before in Mar-a-Lago and before the meeting or during the meeting with Xi Jinping, that any use of chemical weapons would meet a military response. And again, this is what I call the ABO approach to foreign policy, which is anything but Obama. And President Obama did not take action, even though he said it was a red line of chemical weapons. So Trump, any chemical weapons, he's going to do it. Otherwise, he risks being branded an Obama. And he's not going to do that.
Yeah,
but this was not an anti-Russian thing.
He does that, and then the climate also. He's always against what the others did before.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that's correct.
So he's against Europe, basically.
I don't think he's against.
But
I don't think he's against Europe. I think he's influenced by people like Nigel Farage. No, but he is. I mean, Farage is seen as a successful revolutionary figure. Bannon thinks he's a hero, one of the most underrated politicians in Europe. So
because they consider Brexit a great
they think that
achievement.
This was a moment of liberation, where the British people chose, and there's no question.
But
that's not anti-Europe.
As you said at the beginning, right? You are a global newspaper, even if you're not. If the world has changed, this is still your idea, right?
Yeah.
But the world today, it's Italy, it's Vienna, it's Poland, it's Hungary, it's Turkey, everywhere. There's either dictatorship or populism coming up. I mean, Macron is just a miracle that Le Pen was avoided in France. Otherwise, there's a huge tendency to that everywhere.
Well, there is a tendency, but you shouldn't exaggerate it, because if you look at what happened after Brexit, 2017 was the test year for populists. And in Austria, just about the right-wing hardliners, they went into coalition, I agree with that, but they didn't win the election. Mm-hmm. In the Netherlands, the populists did not win. In France, the crucial country, Macron won from nowhere. And in Germany, again, it's true, the AfD did much better than expected. Christian Democrats didn't do as well as expected, and the SPD had a disastrous poll. The result is a grand coalition again. It's also a mini grand coalition. So the centre is just about held. I agree that the trend at the moment is not good.
And what about the economy? How do you look at the economy? This is politics.
Yeah.
Are you considering yourself global, but you're a financial economy?
Yeah, and where this combination, as I said at the beginning, of business, finance, politics, and economics.
Yeah, but how many journalists you have?
568.
568.
568.
And how many are journalists and how many are financial journalists?
Well, the financial journalists, people do different. They write about finance and politics, so we don't have hard divisions.
You don't have
But no. I mean, the political staff overall is probably only about 20. You can't say because we all write about politics and business. I mean, obviously, the overwhelming majority of journalists are business, financial journalists. But we do have specialists in economics and finance, and business and finance journalists. The economy is actually doing quite well, isn't it? And still, we haven't had a Great Depression. Ultra-loose monetary policy has been was the correct response to heading off a Great Depression. There have been perverse consequences, notably inflation of asset prices. It was the right policy response, and I think to raise interest rates too quickly would have been and would be still be in Europe the wrong response. I mean, very slowly these extraordinary central bank unconventional monetary policies are being unwound. But in America, you're pricing in probably going to see, interest rates, and that's right because America's just had a giant tax cut on top of growth of 3+%. You might even get near 4% this year. You're in the 7th, 8th year of recovery. At this stage in the cycle, it's probably necessary to have some interest rate rises. But I wouldn't put us in the same picture.
What, Europe and America?
Yeah, we're lagging slightly. And if you look at the unemployment rate, it's impressive. A lot of jobs being created. Again, the question is, one, how well remunerated, what kind of jobs? There's obviously a whole flexible labour market where people are in part-time work, gig economy. What I'd like to see, but there is some evidence of this, both in Europe, and particularly Germany, but also in America, that wages are rising, and that's probably a good thing. Because I don't think inflation is not a threat at the moment, in our view at the FT. America may be slightly different, and that's, as I say, reflected by the need to adjust monetary policy.
Would you think that Trump is bothering so much the world that people will shift from dollar to other currencies?
No sign of that. Dollar's actually going up, isn't it? Dollar's reasonably strong. That's what's causing some of these problems in emerging markets. People with dollar-denominated debt.
I was thinking, wouldn't it be, avenging against America and saying, okay, you're doing that, now we use euros, we use pounds, we use something else.
No, I don't believe that. Nobody has the strength to do that. I mean, there's a lot of talk about with these financial sanctions, economic sanctions, Iran, people exposed to the American economy, being able to use the dollar as dollar reserves, access to American bank accounts and that they can be targeted, they're exposed. And wouldn't it be great if we could actually have euro-denominated debt and that euro would be a real rival? Well, that's been talked about a long time.
Is Europe
it's not
shrinking?
It's shrinking somewhat demographically, yeah.
No, also as
I've never been
power, as everything.
Well, I remember what was said by, Europe's talk has been louder than its action for some time. And the talk was in 2000, do you remember the summit, which talked about making the most competitive economy in the world by 2010. That was, I think, the Lisbon summit, EU summit, and that didn't happen. Europe has taken some extraordinary measures to strengthen its internal cohesion following the Eurozone crisis. But if you look at the moment where we are, there's no great leap forward, and we are not, we're squeezed at the moment because we're being spurned by America. We've got China on the rise, so we're in a very uncomfortable position. But that's why I probably believe I'm more in the camp of Chancellor Merkel, the President Macron, Tony Blair, saying we actually need a bit more Europe, and Europe needs to stand together in this. I mean, what they're hoping at the moment is that, they ride Trump out. They just wait and hope he loses in 2020 if he stands again. But that might not happen. So they just wait there. They're hoping that this is a storm that will pass. But the geopolitical game on the geopolitical kind of chessboard at the moment, we're at best bishops. We're certainly not king, queen, or rook.
What about England? What about this?
Well, we have to. Okay. We're going through a very difficult period because we're so divided over Brexit. That referendum was disastrously polarising. I don't think it was necessary. And if it was necessary, I'm not a believer in referenda, especially on complex political questions like this one. I mean, this is the most important geopolitical relationship we have. You know, it was struck for its 40 plus years we've been in the EU. And we submit this to a yes or no. I mean, it was irresponsible gamble by Cameron. He should have had a hurdle. He could have had, when constitutional change in America, it's 2/3. You can't pass constitutional change like that. So you have to have a 2/3 majority amongst the states. But the crucial point here is in Scotland in 1979, in the referendum, you had a 40% hurdle that you had to cross. And I think they should have had that in this country. Because the debate was ill-informed, there were scare tactics on both sides. We've ended up with a government that triggered a policy that triggered the exit mechanism, Article 50, with no plan for what the future relationship would be. Now, is this a complete calamity from which the economy and the country will never recover? No, I don't think it is. I think we've got to manage it now responsibly with a sensible transition, and we've got to find new arrangements, and there may be opportunities. I think it's really important that people recognise that the FT, and certainly me, we are not saying that we need a second referendum. I think that could be equally just as polarising, and it might come out with the same result. So I do think that Parliament needs to have a clear view on the ultimate deal, but it can't be seen as a total calamity. We've made this decision, and now we've got to figure out how to make the best of it.
Yeah, are we capable?
Are we capable? Well, my position here is that if we're going to make the best of it, then we need to be thinking very hard about our immigration policy. This was one of the reasons we voted against the European Union. But if we're going to be on our own, trading freely with other countries, we need to be a magnet for the very best talent in the world to come here. We've got to be open. We're going to be this global Britain that Mrs. May talks about. Then we need to have a sensible immigration policy, and we need to be a magnet. What we can't possibly be, and this would be a calamity, is inward-looking, xenophobic. That would be a disaster.
This is
that really would be.
The Brexit, the Farage people want. People I have interviewed and seen in this country, from the president of the Parks to the director of the London School of Economics, from many other people like that. They are afraid from the Cambridge University, from the Institute. They are afraid they will lose the best professor, they will lose from the simple workers, servants in restaurants, almost all Italians or Polish or whatever, to the most prestigious professors, they start losing them. Yeah. And they are afraid in all the different sectors.
I agree with that. No, I'm very concerned about that. I mean, Nigel Farage says he's in favour of more Commonwealth immigration rather than this European immigration. I'm not really sure whether I believe that. He may favour that, but I mean, actually, I think the general position of the Brexiters was anti-immigration. Now, do I think there were some mistakes on immigration policy under Blair? Were we too quick to just have all the Central and East European people coming in? Was it mishandled, misrepresented, underestimated? Yes, this was a mistake, and we didn't support local communities. But that's not an argument for making we can't reduce immigration to tens of thousands as such. One of the other reasons immigrants came in, because we had a successful economy, compared to the rest of Europe.
Bankers are afraid of Corbyn more than Brexit, in the sense that if the same voters decide that this government is irrelevant, they will vote the other side, and the head of the other side is Corbyn.
Well, they're afraid of a Labour government because it's...
Labour also because of the leader.
Well, yeah, because Labour has been essentially taken over by the hard left, something which was resisted successfully in the late 70s and early 80s. The Labour Party stood firm, people like Dennis Healey. There was a split also, obviously, with the SDP. But we have a hard left leadership of the opposition, and they're pledging massive public spending, which could really spook the markets. And this is a throwback to a different era, to the 1970s. And Jeremy Corbyn has been a perpetual oppositionist. He voted against his party more than 500 times. You have a momentum hard left that is kind of growing within the party, and it's dangerous.
Plus, he's an anti-Semite.
Yeah, he's definitely flirted with anti-Semitism, and he's tolerated it. Worse, he's tolerated it. And they say they're going to do something about it. Well, let's see. But, they got a bloody nose in some of the local elections.
So, the Financial Times that you run so successfully, I'm not leaking you, as you said to Barber when he told you that you were such a fantastic man. You remember the beginning? You said, please, don't bullshit. But, the newspaper's doing very well, right?
Yeah. Well, we're almost to 1 million paying readers.
Yeah, and almost more in, what do you do, England, America?
No, we're global.
Asia.
It's all, it's roughly a third.
A third. Asia.
Third in Europe, third in UK, third in America, Asia, sort of 15%.
In Asia?
Yeah, 15%.
And the fact that you have Japanese owners.
They're great. They're long-term investors.
This paper is sold in Japan.
Yeah.
Better, more.
No, it's roughly the same, I think. But they're great owners. They're long-term investors. They're absolutely committed to editorial independence, and we're very happy. We have stable ownership, and we have excellent relationship.
You make money?
Yeah, of course. We've made money ever since I took over.
But that's not obvious for a newspaper.
No, but
the fact.
So how would you feel if I went up to you and said, hello, it's nice to meet you, Alan. I'm the editor of the loss-making Financial Times.
You'll be one of the many other editors in the world, right? They're not so... because of Trump, some newspapers do better in America now, but...
That's not why we're doing well. Do we have a Trump bump? Yes. Do we have a Brexit bounce?
He hates newspapers, but he made them...
He reads the FT.
Yeah. And I want to ask you another question. If England, right, goes down because of all these things we said, Corbyn, Brexit, would the FT go down because it's an English product? In other words, until you were representing a special country in Europe, a successful country, a financial place of great importance, where many, many people, rich people of the world came.
Okay, so this is really important, what I'm about to say, with respect. We are a European news organisation. We believe in European cooperation. We are supporters of the European Union. We've had correspondence all over Europe for more than 3 decades. We are read very closely in Rome, Madrid, Berlin, Paris. I see that. I travel in Europe. My colleagues travel. We will strengthen our position in Europe as if and when Brexit happens. We're absolutely committed to Europe. Europe is our backyard. So whatever happens to the British economy, and we may suffer a bit, the FT is going to be strong, and we will be absolutely committed to Europe.
The weekend, the weekend is very important.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
How much more than the weekly? It sells more.
It does sell more. It's tens of thousands, but, it's very important. It's an important print product. People got more time to spend time with print. At the weekend, we've got a great editor, Alec Russell. Lunch with the FT is a fabulous... We're going to produce another book of the best lunches. We did for our 125th anniversary. We're going to produce another updated version later this year. There are great columnists in the weekend. Mm-hmm. It's a place for culture and ideas. And it's the sherry trifle on top of the spinach that is delivered during the week.
Tell me something, why the economic newspaper, the madam like the FT or Wall Street Journal or in Italy it was Solventico, have the best cultural pages?
My great predecessor, Sir Gordon Newton.
What is the link between this great cultural attention?
First of all, life is not just about mammon. A full life cannot just be about money. A full life. And second, we have to be a place of ideas and debate. That's what the FT is. We have extraordinary people like Martin Wolf, Gideon Rachman, Philip Stevens. These are great minds. And, we all like to write for the Weekend FT. We're not just, opinion and such. That's part of what makes the FT great. So we don't need to make the FT great again. It's great right now.
Alain Elkann interviews.